This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight we're taking your calls and questions about car and truck wrecks. Rear-end collisions are the most common accidents out there, whether it's because somebody's distracted in driving or somebody's aggressive in driving. They can be very damaging. They can be dangerous to you. Any kind of car and truck wreck questions you've got, call in the 31 Law Call number 256-536-0077. You can also email a question. You can email a question anytime, any day of the week. You send it to lawcall@waytv.com. And when we get to a show that's on point, we pull out some of your email questions, and we will have some of your email questions with us tonight. Michael Timberlake is here from Timberlake & League, so is Heath Brooks to answer questions about car and truck wrecks. And before we actually get into taking questions live, we've got some video for you. We've got tonight's You Make the Law Call. We've got some video courtesy of YouTube. Check this out. Now, we haven't had a whole lot of snowy weather here with us lately, but in other, it doesn't even, I don't know if they just hit black ice or if they weren't paying attention and it snuck up on them. That looks serious.
It's like live footage from Governor's Drive from 4 weeks ago.
It does look bad. So when something like this happens, you've got multiple people hitting into multiple people. Where do you even start in determining whose fault this is?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation. You know, the first thing you need to know is that the rule is that you have to drive in a manner that's safe for the conditions that you are driving in. So simply because the speed limit at this time may have been 45 miles an hour or 55 miles an hour doesn't mean you can drive 55 miles an hour if it's not safe. Obviously, this situation presented unusual danger to all these drivers. And so in a situation like this, it's very difficult to establish liability against any one driver. There's also a doctrine called the sudden emergency doctrine, so that if you come up on cars that are already crashed in front of you, and even though you're doing something you probably shouldn't be doing, if you're faced with a sudden emergency, you're only going to be held to the level or responsibility of someone who's faced with that sudden emergency. So it's a little bit of an out for somebody that faces an unusual situation.
So tonight, taking calls and questions all about car and truck wrecks. You brought with you also Heath Brooks tonight.
We brought Heath Brooks. He's the guy that I ask questions to all the time. Sometimes I don't like the answers, but I ask him a lot of questions.
Good to be here.
And you guys handle cases like this all the time. Okay, start with the police report. Heath, if I get a police report and it says I'm the cause of the accident, is that it? Do I just give up and say, okay, I'm paying for this?
Not in the state of Alabama. In the state of Alabama, the police report isn't even admissible. Most folks don't know this. A police report is not admissible to show who's at fault for a collision. You know, the only two entities that can determine who is at fault is the jury or the judge. So if the police officer assesses fault, sometimes that helps us gather some information, talk to the police officer, find out why he may have assessed a fault, give us some avenues to work within. But in terms of, is that going to sway a jury? Jury never even knows what the police officer thought. So that's not admissible.
Very interesting, because a lot of people really count on that. They look at that police report and they get their hopes up or their hearts broken with whatever's said.
Or they come out with, the insurance company says, well, we're not going to accept liability in this situation. They ask us, why can they do that? The police report says the other person's at fault, and they can. The insurance company can, make their own assessment of the facts and circumstances and make a decision that's different than what's on the report. Likewise, we do that for our clients. If it's a situation that the information is not accurate, or we don't think there's information that should have been recorded that's there or could be acquired, then we'll go out and get that information, work for our clients to prove that our client was not at fault in the wreck.
Yeah.
We've got callers waiting. We've got Mike on the line with a question from Huntsville. Hi, Mike. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
I was going to call. My wife was at work, and a guy, the speed limit inside the parking lot there is supposed to everywhere 15 miles an hour.
Okay.
And he hit my wife in the driver's door.
Wow. Okay.
And he messed up the driver's fender, right fender, in the front fender, in the back door. He done over $6,000 worth of damage.
Wow.
And the speed limit's supposed to be 15.
Yep.
But she didn't get hurt, thankfully.
Yeah.
And the guy admitted the fault, but his insurance company, he has got the car in the shop, but the guy that's doing the work he don't have no thing saying, because he knocked the driver's door plumb in, and it cut the computer wires in two.
Okay.
And
Is
what
the
we're trying to do what now?
Go ahead. What was your question?
What we're trying to figure out is my wife not is supposed to be compensated for the loss of her vehicle and the accident. She didn't get injured.
Well, you know, Mike, parking lot cases can get very, very difficult. And the reason why is because when you're in a parking lot, you may have a speed limit sign in a parking lot, and you think, well, heck, that's the speed limit. But the reality is in a parking lot, if there's a speed limit sign, it's suggested, because a police officer in the police department doesn't necessarily have jurisdiction inside of a parking lot. Oftentimes, we don't get a police report from a parking lot. Folks will exchange information, and then we'll learn what happened through the two people that got involved in the incident. So a lot of times you can't rely upon what the speed limit is. You drive back to what is reasonable to do in a parking lot. In other words, if that fella said, hey, look, your wife was just driving down the aisle and he pulled out and backed into her and admitted fault, that's not reasonable to act within a parking lot. So he would be responsible for the damages to your wife's car, and if she was injured or anything like that, thank goodness she wasn't, he would be responsible for that too. But we see parking lot cases from time to time. Sometimes we got to do a lot of sleuthing work and recreating the scene, gathering the witnesses, seeing if there's video, because there oftentimes won't be a report that will help us out.
Right. You know, for damages in property damage cases, what he's talking about, if there's not an injury, then what you're looking at in terms of damages is really the difference between the value of your car before the wreck and the value of your car after the wreck. Now, what does that consist of? If the vehicle can be repaired, then typically that's the cost of the repair plus any diminution in value, which means reduced value because it's been in a wreck, and then any loss of use, which is really a rental car. So what happens in most of these situations is they will, offer to repair your vehicle, rent you a car for the time that you're without your vehicle, and then pay you something for the loss of the value of your vehicle. Now, the loss of value is a highly disputed thing. In older cars, insurance companies argue there is no loss of value because they're actually putting your car in a better position than it was in. With newer cars, you can get diminution in value, but it's never as much as you want in that situation. If the car is a total loss, they'll pay you the fair market value of the vehicle and no other damages, really. You get the price of the car, what it would go for in the fair market, and then you don't get any other damages for your pain and for your mental anguish or hassle or anything like that.
Yep.
Good luck with it, Mike. We've got Tina on the line with a question from Madison. Hi, Tina. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Yes, I would like to know, I had an accident, and the other driver, which they were found at fault because they had no driver's license or insurance.
Okay.
But now my insurance is not wanting to pay the full claim, and I'm really not understanding why.
Okay.
Yeah,
Guys, walk her through that.
Well, I mean, if it's a property damage claim, your insurance, if it's a property damage claim and we'll just talk about it for both ways. If it is a property damage claim and the other party doesn't have any insurance to pay for it, then you can make a claim on your collision coverage, which is the insurance that you have to pay for the property damage for your vehicle. However, you're going to have to pay the deductible out of pocket. So it'd be $250, $500, maybe $1,000 for the deductible that you're out of pocket. Now, Heath, if she's injured, can she get compensation if the other party doesn't have insurance?
Yeah, you have a policy of what's called uninsured motorist coverage, as long as you have that type of coverage with your policy and you haven't waived it. But that's the type of policy that your insurance company will step into the shoes of the defendant to pay you damages, what you would have been entitled to had that person who caused the wreck had insurance. So in your scenario, your insurance is going to pay your bodily injury, the things like pain and suffering, your medical bills, if you have any permanent injury or things like that. They're going to pay your personal injury claim up to what they believe you are entitled to. Now, there may be a difference of opinion about what you believe or what an attorney would believe or what a jury would believe you would be entitled to than what your insurance company believes you're entitled to, and that may be the disconnect.
Okay.
Yeah, so and just because you have a certain amount of uninsured motorist coverage doesn't mean they're automatically going to pay it. Usually it's $25,000 per car, but just because you have it doesn't mean they're going to give you the entire amount. They're only going to pay what they believe is the reasonable amount of the claim, and that's where we kind of come into play in the situation. If they don't make a reasonable offer, then we can go to court and prove what is reasonable.
Probably worth it to talk to a lawyer ahead of time before you
Absolutely.
don't take the deal until you've talked to somebody.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break, be right back answering more of your questions about car and truck wrecks. Stay with us.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call, where lawyers come to help. Your rights, your calls, live. Hosted by family law attorney Sharon Doviet. With the personal injury attorneys of one of the Valley's most respected law firms, Timberlake and League. Featuring the knowledge of managing partner Michael Timberlake, with millions of dollars awarded to his clients, and the experience of attorney Will League, a strong courtroom fighter known for his commitment to winning, and the fellow partners of Timberlake and League Heath Brooks and William Meservey. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome back to 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight we're taking calls and questions about car and truck wrecks. And we've got with us both Michael Timberlake and Heath Brooks from Timberlake and League answering questions. And we've got callers waiting. We've got Ann on the line with a question from Huntsville. Hi, Ann. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Yes, I had a accident in November,
Okay.
and my car was totaled.
Okay.
Well, I can't get reimbursed until I provide my title. Well, I can't find my title.
Oh, okay.
Right.
You guys faced that before. What do you do?
We have.
Yeah, but been there, done that. And basically, if you can't find your title, you can ask for it. You can get a replacement title. You have to go through Montgomery, through the Department of Transportation. But basically, you fill out an application. I think you can fill out an application online now and request a replacement title. There may be some proof of that you need, but they will. As long as it's the same owner, they will. It's easy to get a replacement title in that situation. It takes some time, but it is doable.
It's good to have your paperwork. If you got a bill of sale or anything like that you can submit with it, you'll need to know the car's VIN number and all. Call the Department of Motor Vehicles. Generally, it'll take about 3 or 4 weeks if they're on it.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the different kinds of insurance, because you mentioned before collision coverage, and what are the different types of insurance coverage for vehicles that we need to understand?
Yeah, I mean, the coverages that you're talking about, there's people talk about full coverage or liability only. Basically, coverages, there's different types of coverages that you can get for a motor vehicle. When we're talking about liability, that means how much that your insurance company would have to pay another person for the damage that they caused to that you caused to their body or their property. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at liability coverage, you understand that if they exhaust your liability coverage, then the other person can come after your house, your car, your cat, and your dog. So you want to make sure you have enough money or enough coverage there to pay in the event that you cause serious damage to somebody else. And that's liability coverage. The other type of coverage we talk about are collision coverage, and that's coverage that would cover your property if somebody else was to injure it, or if you were to damage your car. It's basically a no-fault situation where if somebody else hurts it and they don't have coverage, you can make a claim on your own insurance to get that kind of coverage. Now, there's a couple of type of coverages that can provide you for medical expenses and bodily injury, right, Heath?
Yeah, that's right. You got medical payments coverage, which is a no-fault type of, what I call a no-fault type of coverage. So if you get in a wreck and a deer runs out in front of your car and you sustain injuries that require you to pay medical bills, if you have medical payments coverage under your car insurance, then your medical payments coverage can be used to pay those medical bills. Doesn't matter whether you're at fault, somebody else is at fault, you can make that claim with your insurance company. You also have what's called, and we've talked a little bit about, uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, meaning if you get hit by somebody and they don't have insurance or they don't have enough liability insurance to cover the full extent of your injuries, then you can take advantage of your uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. And in the state of Alabama, which we have pretty unique here in Alabama, you have the ability to stack up to 3 cars for your uninsured motorist coverage. So if you have the mandatory minimum in the state of Alabama of $25,000 per car, and you have 3 cars, you could potentially have $75,000 in uninsured motorist coverage. So it's important to know kind of what coverage you're dealing with so that you can assess your risk moving forward.
Yeah, and the underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage is really the only way you can protect yourself and your family and the occupants of your vehicle in a situation. So you want to make sure you maximize that. Get as much as you can possibly afford. Your medical payments coverage on the vehicle typically is $1,000, $2,000, or $5,000, so it doesn't pay a lot, but it will offset some expenses.
I heard 20% of drivers in the state of Alabama are uninsured, so it is critically important to have uninsured motorist coverage, and this is something an insurance company won't tell you unless you sign what's called a waiver of your uninsured motorist coverage. You've got it, okay? So so you need to always, one thing a lawyer will tell you, read what you sign. So when you go in and you get your insurance, make sure as you're signing through that paperwork, you don't waive your right to uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, because I know the story. Somebody sits down, says, look, the person who hit me doesn't have insurance. I've been terribly injured. What do I do? And I make a claim with their insurance company, find out they signed a waiver, and there is no insurance. Over 20% of drivers in Alabama are uninsured. Be safe.
How is that possible when it's the law that you're supposed to have it?
Well, they have to offer it is what they do, but you can waive it. And what they'll say, what you can say is, well, I don't want to pay for that because, it increases my premium a little bit. But it's really the most important insurance you can have because it protects you and your family.
Okay.
That's right.
We always invite you to send in email questions, and we got this email question from Wade. Wade wrote in and said, my mother was in a wreck. There may be some health complications. We aren't sure yet. The driver of the truck that hit her said he blew a tire and lost control, and the company seems to agree with that assessment. We filed a claim with the company's insurance, and we're waiting to hear more. Anything you can tell us about what to expect next or how to handle this would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just because somebody has a mechanical failure doesn't mean they're not responsible for a wreck. And so in these situations, you'd look to, what was really the cause? Was this something that they would expect to happen? Or potentially, is this something that somebody else caused a repair or somebody other kind of shop?
Well, you got two potential claims here. One is you've got a claim against the driver for not assessing their vehicle before they got on the road. As a driver, you're always responsible for the condition of your vehicle, as much as you can reasonably know about. But the other thing is that a company, if you're driving a company truck, the company could also be responsible for failing to maintain that vehicle in a safe condition too. Oftentimes when we see this with trucking accidents, we see this with fleet vehicles, companies will have a policy and a procedure of how they evaluate their vehicles. And if oftentimes we find once we get these documents that the company isn't even following their own policies and procedures. We have handled a number of cases where the tires have been worn on a vehicle because the company just hasn't checked or replaced the tires like they were supposed to do. So anytime you get involved in a situation where you have a mechanical defect of a company vehicle, that can get a lot more complicated than just if it's, you driving around, you hit a nail and your tire blows out and you cause a wreck. Always probably need to talk to a lawyer about those kinds of situations.
Okay.
Or you can get the really strange case where the tire comes off a vehicle and the people says, well, look, I just had my tires repaired or tires rotated or whatever, and you can go back and look at when they did that. And if it was close in time to this incident, you can prove that they didn't, tighten the tires that they should have, then you can potentially make a claim against the shop.
Gotcha. We've got Francis on the line with a question from Decatur. Hi, Francis. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Hi, yes.
Hi.
My question is, if I let somebody or a friend or a relative borrow my car and they have legal driving license, but they do something real stupid and have a bad accident, will they come after me as well?
Good question.
Well, that is a good question. So first thing you look at is say, okay, if they hurt somebody else, whose insurance will pay for it? Will it be the driver or is it mine because it's my car? Insurance follows the car. So basically, if you loan your car to someone else and they have permission to use your vehicle, then your insurance would be the primary coverage for that incident. Now, if they have insurance at home on another vehicle, their insurance would be secondary. So if they exhaust the coverage on your vehicle, you can look to their coverage at home to pay for the damages. The other thing you could show, but if you entrust that vehicle to somebody who's not reliable, you can be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that's the problem. Anytime you deal with a situation where you're giving somebody the keys, what you want to make sure of is if you give somebody the keys to your car, that they're not drunk, that they're safe to drive a vehicle. In other words, if you're aware that they've had 17 wrecks in the past 2 weeks, may not want to give them the keys to your car because they may not be a safe driver, and you've entrusted a dangerous instrumentality is what the fancy legal term for it is, and you could be responsible because of that. So, if the driver that you loaned your car to is a safe driver, you don't have any reason to believe that they're going to do anything unsafe, and they make a mistake and cause a collision, you're probably not going to be at the hook for it. But if you know that they're drunk, you give them the keys of the car they drive and they hurt somebody, you probably could be.
If it's just a regular wreck, they weren't drunk, they were, just accidents happen, and we've exhausted all the insurance coverage.
Sure.
The other person was driving my car. Can somebody come after my house, my dog, and my cat, as you said before?
Well, that's kind of the difference between whether you negligently entrust the vehicle to them or whether you just give someone permission. If you give permission for somebody that's reliable and that you have no reason to know or could have known that they were going to be reckless or going to be a bad driver, then you personally are not going to be responsible.
Okay.
Your insurance on your vehicle would pay the claim for permissive users, but they couldn't come after you personally.
Okay.
If you knew that they were a bad driver and they should be driving, or they were on drugs and they've wrecked 10 cars in the last week, you can be individually responsible.
Okay. Yep. All right. We're going to take a break. Be right back answering more of your questions about car and truck wrecks. Stay with us. If you haven't gotten your questions answered tonight, here's how to get in touch with personal injury attorneys Michael Timberlake and Heath Brooks. They are with Timberlake & League, and they handle all kinds of personal injury cases, from car accidents to medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, product liability. If you've been injured by a product, their number is 256-536-0770 or 800-804-2502. The website is law-injury.com, and if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way. And one of them will be on the midday show tomorrow, answering questions as well.
And our friend Sharon Dovey practices family law here in Huntsville. She does child custody, divorce, all kinds of family law related matters. 256-539-7337 at SharonFamilyLaw.com. She's got a website. It's great. Check it out.
Thank you. Okay, how much time do people have to file a lawsuit if something happens? We're talking about car and truck accidents.
In Alabama, you have 2 years from the date of the wreck in order to file a lawsuit in the courthouse, or you can't make a claim. But
1 year in Tennessee.
1 year in Tennessee. Okay.
That's right.
But
it's got to be filed in the courthouse.
Not just talking about it.
Not just talking about it. It's got to be filed.
Talking to an insurance
Not hiring
company.
a lawyer, filed in the courthouse.
Okay. Thanks for all your questions tonight. We'll see you next week.